Um, we are very happy to meet with you today. Thank you for joining us from wherever you are, here in the US or abroad. I'm going to provide you with some brief introductions and an overview of our program. And then Julie will provide you with some of the nitty-gritty, brass tacks, whatever metaphor you prefer, to sort of think about the practical steps in applying for our PhD program. Um, so yes, we are, maybe Julie, you can advance it to the next slide.
Sure.
So this is just to introduce ourselves. Yopi Prinz, me, Julie Burnett, there. And why don't we go ahead to the next slide? So a comparative literature PhD is by definition a very interdisciplinary, interdepartmental kind of program because when you're working in comparative literature, you are working across many different languages and cultures. Some of you may come with different undergraduate degrees, different areas of expertise, languages. Some of you may come from anthropology departments or history departments or single national literature departments. So we think about our department as being very open to different backgrounds and open to students who have curiosity, but working across disciplines and across cultures and languages. Our faculty is also very interdisciplinary. We all hold joint appointments in at least one other unit. Many of us have connections to area studies centers or even directors of those centers at the International Institute. Many of our courses are listed in different departments. And when students join our PhD program, they have the flexibility to take courses outside of our department, as well as a number of core courses within our department. And so we often have faculty teaching from other departments teaching in our department, and students have a chance to take courses and potentially also teach in other departments. We're also very interdisciplinary in the sense that our PhD can be combined with other certificate programs in museum studies, women's and gender studies, Judaic studies. We have our own graduate certificate in critical translation studies. In recent years, a lot of our students have become interested in digital studies. So there's a lot of opportunity to combine your PhD with an area of expertise that you would also like to claim and make visible. So that's a kind of preliminary overview of Complit as a very inherently interdisciplinary degree. If you'd like to learn more about our faculty, we have core faculty. Go ahead, Julie, you can go to the next one, who have joint appointments in comparative literature. And then we have a wide number of faculty affiliates who have courtesy appointments in our department and often work with our graduate students. If you want to learn more about our faculty, you can go to our website and you'll see there's a people page that lists the core faculty, affiliated faculty, our graduate students, and our recently emeriti faculty. So you can learn more about our various interests. Julie, if you go to the next slide, you'll see there's also a button you can push on research that indicates sort of various topical clusters that our faculty embrace in their research. Depending on your own interests, you can learn a little bit more about faculty who work in those areas. So that's a useful resource for doing research about our program. We also provide more detailed information on our website about the program. If you click on graduates, you'll see that there's information about in the menu on the left side, information about our PhD program, how we reach out to prospective students, the kind of range of graduate courses we teach, how students pursue internships as part of their PhD. Those are options that sometimes they can take advantage of. The graduate certificate that we offer in critical translation studies is something that's become very popular. because we have a very strong research area in critical translation studies. You can also learn more about recent dissertations that our students have completed, activities that our students are involved in organizing, and paths to comparative literature that different students have pursued from their undergraduate studies into the graduate program. Next page, Julie. So our program is a 6-year program. It is a funded program, which means that all of our students who are admitted into our program are admitted with fellowship and teaching support. So over a 6-year period, you can get a combination of support through teaching and fellowship. And the tuition is also covered. We emphasize international interdisciplinary nature of comparative literature. We have students working across literature, arts, and media. We think very comparatively across all those different media and genres. We have a flexible curriculum. We are very humanities oriented. We are interested in advocating for the humanities, but we also have students who are with interest in science and technology studies or sociology, sort of the social sciences. We have strong language requirements. We look for students who have at least one language at the advanced level when they're applying and another language on its way to being advanced. We also provide support for students who don't have 2 languages yet at the advanced level so that they can achieve, that proficiency by the time they are in their 3rd year. Our program places a strong emphasis on literary, critical, and cultural theory, but we have a very eclectic approach to defining what theory is. Each one of our faculty would give you a different answer to the question, what is comparative literature and what kind of theory do you do? Next slide, Julie. To give you a sense of how the PhD program is structured over the 6-year period, after their 1st year taking coursework, the students in their 3rd term and the fall of their 2nd year have a kind of informal meeting, mentoring meeting. We just completed our 3rd term reviews with our current 2nd year students. It's a chance to get mentoring and feedback on how things are going so far. The next milestone is in year 3 when students prepare to take a preliminary exam. It's an exam based on a reading list devised by the students themselves in consultation with their committee of 3 faculty. One faculty member on the exam committee has to be from comparative literature, but the other 2 can be from any other department. After the preliminary exam, students achieve candidacy, and then they pursue what we call a candidacy project, which is a sort of a trial run at putting together a project that may be related to your doctoral dissertation research. And students work on this over the summer after their 3rd year, and they present it to their committee in the fall. And then based on that milestone, students develop a prospectus, a plan for writing the dissertation. They defend that in year 4, and then the last 2 years of the program are dedicated to research and writing and completing the dissertation. So that's a quick overview. Next slide. I want to really emphasize that we're very aware that a PhD in the humanities needs to be versatile, right? It needs to prepare you for going into the world with a number of career options. It is difficult to get a tenure track position these days. It used to be that students would go into comparative literature or any PhD program thinking that this would be the gateway to a tenure track position. I think it's important to be mindful right from the beginning of this big decision and commitment you're making that a PhD in comparative literature will not necessarily lead to a teaching position in the academy, right? It may not lead to a tenure track position. It may lead to other kinds of teaching positions. Students in recent years have gone on to teach as lecturers or in liberal arts colleges or community colleges. They've also, some of them have gone into secondary education, other educational settings. A good number of students use their research skills to go into teaching adjacent academic fields, whether it's in museums, libraries, archives. They also do, work related to translation, other kinds of, public engagement, public humanities. I think it's very important to be realistic that a PhD in comparative literature will give you an opportunity to explore your research interests and will give you teaching experience, but we really want the PhD to be versatile and giving you other kinds of skills so that you're also thinking about what you might do with a PhD and beyond academia. And so creating a versatile PhD with opportunity for internships, giving you teaching experience, but also giving you research experience is very important to us. And we want you to really think carefully about what is your goal for doing a PhD? What are you seeking to get from your 6 years in a funded PhD program? What is important to you about comparative literature? We value intellectual curiosity and research for its own sake, but we also want you to think about what other capacities you're developing during this time in graduate school. So that's our kind of basic philosophy in this day and age of graduate education, and we remain very committed to the value of the humanities. We do have a little bit of information about you, about what happens to our alums. Julie, if you can go to our next slide. This is a sort of, you can see this on our website too, but this is information about placement. So people who go into tenure track, maybe 20%, others who go into becoming non-tenure track instructors. A good number of our students go on to postdocs before entering the teaching profession or going on to other fields. A good number are thinking about administrative positions in academia and higher ed, or professional research in other non-academic contexts. A good number of our students end up doing work as freelance translators or independent scholars. So that's a kind of an overview of where our students go after graduating. Next slide, Julie. These are our current placements. So we are still doing pretty well in terms of, maybe 30% of our students go on to tenure track position, but it's an unpredictable world right now. So I'm going to turn it over now to Julie, who's going to tell you a little bit more about how our funding package works, because she's the one who handles a lot of the finances for students when they come into our program. So Julie.
Sure. Excellent. Thank you, Yopi. So as Yopi mentioned, admission to the program comes with guaranteed funding. And we do a 6-year package right up front is what the offer includes. That includes full tuition, health and dental insurance, a stipend for your living expenses, and summer funding, which is actually now just part of the stipend that has recently changed at Michigan. One of the things to note about the health and dental insurance at Michigan that is unique from other institutions is that your partner and your dependents can be covered under your health insurance at no additional cost to the student. So all of that is fully covered by the university during your studies. Also in the department, we give every student $5,000 in what we're calling a startup research funding account that you can use to do summer language, study abroad research. And we give another fellowship term and some funding support during your 4th year for at least one term. Most of our students will use that term to go study abroad or go do field work wherever they need to. Yopi also mentioned that funding is provided through a combination of fellowships and teaching appointments, which are called GSI appointments here at Michigan. Typically, students will receive a fellowship for their full 1st year, and then we start teaching in their 2nd year, first in the English departments first year writing requirement course, and then in Complet usually after that. Additionally, there are a lot of other sources for funding here on campus, other places you can seek funding. So from the department, there's conference travel awards, there's job seeker funds that are used at the end of your studies if you'd like. We have emergency and discretionary funding available. We are also, our graduate program is housed under the Rackham Graduate Program at the University of Michigan. So they have a ton of funding opportunities for things that pay tuition and stipends, grants for foreign language study, dissertation research, conference travel, emergency grants, a lot of different funding. I won't go through this whole list because it's quite a long list, and I will make sure that you have these slides at the end. But just to say there are quite a few resources for funding and opportunities for funding at Michigan. After that, yeah, sorry, go ahead, Yopi.
So now we want to switch kind of to the second part of our presentation before we go to your questions, to kind of give you a sense of not only how to apply to the program, but also kind of how we do our review process. So the Department of Comparative Literature, as like other PhD programs at the University of Michigan, we think in a very holistic way about the admissions process. We, given the fact that we don't have a large cohort, we have to think very carefully about how our students fit with the particular strengths and resources of our program. So if we have a very promising student who's working in an area that we cannot support as a department, no matter how wonderful the student is, it would not be responsible by us to accept them. So we think very much about what is the fit with our program in terms of fields, in terms of preparation, areas of interests, goals, etc. We also think about diversity within our cohorts. We don't want to have 5 students all working in, Francophone literatures in the same cohort. And we think about, diversity in terms of languages, in terms of thematic and global interests, in terms of students' backgrounds and interests. So we are thinking very much about creating a balanced cohort where students will really learn from each other as well as from the faculty. So to create a holistic evaluation process, we ask you to provide a statement of purpose as well as a personal statement, as well as the usual, transcripts of your grades, letters of recommendation. We also ask for writing samples. We do not focus on one criterion at the expense of all the others. And we do not have a minimum requirement for any criterion. We think about the criteria in relation to each other to get an overall sense of the profile of the student. So that's how we think about it at the departmental level. Perhaps, Julie, you can go ahead and talk a little bit about what it looks like at the graduate school level.
Absolutely. So you will apply through the Rackham Graduate School, and it's kind of a shared application for the entire institution. I have gotten word that the application is already open, so you're welcome to go in and start an application at any time. You don't actually pay the admissions application fee until you are ready to submit. So if you want to just go in and make an account and poke around, that's free to do. You can go in and do that. So you will apply on Rackham's website. You should note that if you decide to apply for another program at U of M, or you decide to apply for more than one program, that the application deadlines can be different for every program. So you should make sure you're paying attention to each specific website or for the department and what their deadline is. On our website, there's a lot of information about the admissions process, specifically in our FAQs, go through specific application materials, questions, program information, funding. All of these questions have been generated because folks like you have written us and asked. So we encourage you to ask us questions because it helps us find out what folks still need to know and how to keep building these out in the future. But that's a great place to go for more information. As far as what's required in our application, one of the things that you may see here that you don't see other places is that we actually have two statements. The first is a statement of purpose. The second is a personal statement. We'll talk more about what both of those have in them in a few minutes. Then you send in your CV or resume, two writing samples. We'll talk about those as well. 3 letters of recommendation, transcripts from any institution where you've earned a degree, which means that if you took one class at a local college somewhere in the summer and transferred it back to your home institution, we don't need those transcripts, only any institution where you earned a degree. Demonstration of English language proficiency if you're a non-native English speaker. There are some pretty detailed instructions on Rackham's website about who does and doesn't need that, but I can also help you figure that out. One thing to note that we are no longer reviewing GRE scores. So even if you send them to the institution, we will not see them and they will not be reviewed. There are a couple parts in here that we really want to point out and make sure that you fill out in the application, specifically because these things can help us find out if there are other fellowships that we can nominate you for, which comes with kind of a prestige and titles, but also some funding that helps us out too. So one of the things we really want you to do is fill out this activities information page when you get into your application. That is one of the important ones to make sure that we're able to screen you for fellowships. As to the academic statement of purpose, this statement should be about 500 words long, so it's usually 1 to 2 pages. Talk about your intellectual trajectory, your scholarly plans, and your gentle interest in the humanities, and why you're choosing Complit at U of M to apply to.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, go ahead, Yopi. Do you want to?
Yeah, I wanted to just mention that a statement of purpose is a way of introducing your academic interests and background to the committee of faculty reviewing your application. And so I think that one of the things that the admissions committee really looks for is not necessarily what dissertation are you going to write. We don't necessarily expect you to know your dissertation research. In fact, we always worry a little bit if someone has already decided what their dissertation will be, because the whole process of the PhD, a 6-year program, is to kind of develop a topic. And so what we like to see is someone with a range of interests, curious about new developments in different fields, sort of building on what they've learned in their previous studies to kind of figure out what direction they might want to go in. What are the questions they care about? What are the leading questions for them as students? And also if there's something that they've really been excited about working on in their previous studies, that gives a sense of, how engaged you are with the field, with your work, so the statement of purpose is not necessarily my plan is to write a dissertation on X, but it's more, these are the questions that will guide me in graduate school and that I hope to learn more about.
All right. The second statement is a personal statement. And what we really want you to answer here is how you have come to be interested in Complit, any challenges you might have faced in obtaining your education and getting to where you are now, relevant experiences you've had, and what aspirations you have for the future. This is another one I can say that this statement often we are also able to use to help identify potential fellowship opportunities. So we do ask that you take some time and think about that. So there are some more prompts here that might be helpful as you're writing this statement. And again, we'll make sure these slides are available to everyone. The one thing that we really want to encourage you to not do is to just repeat your statement of purpose over in the personal statement. So, Yopi, do you have anything else to say about?
Yeah, I mean, the personal statement does not necessarily need to be totally self-revelatory or confessional, but just to give us a sense of, who you are as a person, and It's always interesting to hear about an activity you've been really actively engaged in, or something you've done outside of school that has brought you actually back into school. Um, we are really eager to hear about any specific experiences you've had that kind of augment what you've said in the statement, the academic statement. Um, so.
All right. Next is the letter of recommendation section. So we do require 3 letters of recommendation. And we really want you to request letters from those who are best able to assess your ability to succeed in graduate school. You can submit letters from anyone you select, but letters from instructors are usually more helpful than letters that are related to teaching or employment that you have done. Another thing I can say is that I've been doing this a decade and a half now. And what is also more helpful is to have letters from instructors who really know you more than there might be somebody that who is really big in the field, say, or that you're interested in, but doesn't know you well. Those letters are actually less helpful than somebody who can tell us about your abilities to write and be in the classroom and be a participant of the community. So just be very thoughtful when you're choosing your recommenders. We recommend that you share your statement of purpose and CV with them when they're writing the letters. That often helps get strong letters. We do recommend that you contact them several months before the application deadline, just so that they are able to get them in on time. They have plenty of time to do so. U of M will not allow us to accept letters from Interfolio or any third-party services, so your recommenders will need to go in through the U of M system to do their letters. They can always reach out to me if they're having difficulty doing so, and we can put them in touch with the right place. This is another thing that I would recommend going through and starting early in your application, because you can send these requests out before your application is submitted, so your recommenders can start working on them. So I recommend getting that information in as soon as possible and giving your writers plenty of time.
I definitely endorse that as a faculty recommender, that, we all have lists of recommendations that we have to write. In order to get you to the top of the list, you have to kind of get your name in early on. Yeah.
There are also some conflict specific questions on the application, particularly into what your specific areas of interest or field of study are. Those help us kind of find potential faculty that might be good matches for you. Grad students who you might be interested in talking to helps us put that together. There is a place for you to list the faculty at U of M that you are interested in working with. So when we showed you in the earlier portion where you can find those core faculty and then the affiliate faculty, you're going to want to take a look at those 2 lists and list faculty here.
I
Um,
wanted to add one thing
yep,
to that. So we are not a university where you have a single advisor that you come to work, like perhaps in the sciences you come to work in someone's lab. It's a very targeted application. As a department, we do not have you come to work with just one faculty member. So it's important for you to list various people in your area of interest that you imagine you might want to work with, because we really subscribe to more like a team model of mentoring, right? That from your milestones will always be done by committee, and although you will have one faculty member chairing your committee and always at least one faculty member from Comp Lit in your committee, that doesn't necessarily mean that you will just identify with one faculty member. We try to kind of pool our strengths to support your progress through the program. So it's important to think of more than one person and not to assume that the people you list will be your primary and only chair.
yep. And then in that second part, you can list affiliated faculty, but they don't have to be affiliated faculty. So if you come across other folks at U of M that you're interested in working with, feel free to list them in that second part as well. There are also some questions about the languages that you plan to incorporate during your studies. So in the actual like form part of the application from the graduate school, they're going to ask about your language proficiencies and what languages you already have. This question is different in that we want to know what you're going to study as part of the PhD. And if any of those languages you have not started yet. So.
And I just wanted to build on that a little bit. You may already have one or two languages at the advanced level, and in order to achieve candidacy, that would be sufficient for our requirements. But you may find in the course of your graduate studies that, if you're interested in Francophone literature, as that one student who became very interested in Vietnamese literature, she realized she needed in the course of her graduate studies to learn Vietnamese, right? So that maybe not be something that you come in with, but that you decide early on you will need to pursue your research. So there are students who say, I don't have this language yet, but I think it will be important to my area of study. Others who might say, I have um, one advanced language, but I'm really still working on the other one. And that's what I'm really going to be focusing on during my graduate studies. So it's not as if we expect you to have all your languages at your fingertips when you apply, but we do sort of try to think about what your plan is to how to study those languages. And we make funding available. We actually have what's called a research startup fund that you can use in the summer after your first and second year to focus on language study that will become relevant to your dissertation.
There is also a specific question about interest in Judaic studies. This is another question that we use to identify folks who may qualify for relevant fellowships. So if that is relevant to you, make sure you fill that one out. So Yopi, do you want to take writing samples?
Yes. So the writing samples, one should be a critical essay that you've written in English that shows your ability to think critically, around a topic, whether it's a theoretical question or a literary topic or something you worked on, perhaps as part of your undergraduate thesis. So it's something that shows your ability to sort of think critically with and through a topic. The other should be an essay that's written in another language that shows you have language proficiency. If you didn't write the language originally, I mean, if you wrote the essay in English, but you'd like to show that you have proficiency, you can translate it into the other language. If you are specializing in ancient languages, obviously we're not going to expect you to write an essay in, Sanskrit or ancient Greek, but what we do want you to show in that essay is careful engagement with the text that demonstrates, philological expertise or some proficiency with that language. So the writing samples should be critical essays that you have written yourself. And although we are interested in translation, we do not accept literary translations as a writing sample unless the translation is accompanied by, substantial critical reflection or some kind of theorizing about the question of translation. So if you put your translation in that critical context, we will accept it as an essay, a writing sample. But otherwise, we really are looking for your own original work.
All right, thank you. Yopi already alluded to this earlier too, but I just want to point out that the information that you are providing us, especially in your statement of purpose, about your areas of interest, does not lock you into working with any specific faculty member or research project. This is not a contract, right? That if we admit you have to study X, Y, and Z that you wrote in your application, and that's what you're stuck with. It is acceptable to acknowledge what you don't know yet that you want to know. Really, like Yopi said, we're not looking for somebody who's like, I have all the answers already, because then the question is going to be, okay, why do you need to study for 6 years, right? So also that it is perfectly reasonable and acceptable that folks will have changes as they continue through their coursework and their interests. And your dissertation will not look like your statement of purpose, right? That we expect growth and movement in there. So don't think that you're locked into whatever you're writing. This is very much a snapshot in at this point in time in what you're interested in. All right. One of the questions that we get more than any other question, as I'm sure most schools do, is what can I do to make my application more competitive? Um, Again, ask your letter writers to write letters. Not only does that make sure that you will actually get all three of your letters in and on time and make sure that all of our reviewers are seeing them, but the letters are probably going to be a better quality if your faculty has more time to think and reflect on it than if they have to do it in 24 hours. We really encourage you to investigate the strengths of the department, and really learn about how you could fit in with Complit, how Complit could be a fit for your interests and work with that. You are welcome to reach out to members of our faculty. They may or may not answer you depending on if they're on leave, how busy they are, all of those kinds of things. Um,
And
Same with,
also, it's
sorry,
important to know that the faculty you contact may not have anything to do with the admissions process, right? If you contact a faculty member, they may not be serving on the admissions committee. They may not know exactly how the admission process works in comparative literature. So they will not be able to give you assessment of what are your chances of getting admitted. But what they can do is provide you some information about their interests, what kind of courses they teach. They might want to say, yeah, I think that's a really um, emerging area that you're looking, and we have strengths in this area at the university.
and then our last piece of advice really is to leave yourself enough time to revise your application and to ask somebody else to proofread your statements. We are not going to, like Yopi said, there's no piece of your application that if there's an error that's going to automatically exclude you from the process, but it is important to proofread and make sure that you're as accurate as you can be in your application. Anything else to add to this advice, Yopi?
Yeah, I think a thoughtful application that really has taken the time to think through, um, why you're applying for a PhD, what you're hoping to get out of it, is meaningful to us as a department. And if it looks like you've hastily assembled an application, just as and without much explanation for why, grad school, if you're just thinking, I want to do more, I want to, I don't want to leave school, I was an undergrad, I just want to keep going. That's not very persuasive to us. We have to have a sense that you really have a vision or a mission to pursue in graduate school. It can't just be a default option. I think we feel that someone has just not doesn't know what to do next, therefore applying to grad school, that is less compelling to us.
All right, thank you. Next, we would like to introduce you to two of our current students who have been kind enough to join us today. So I'm going to invite them each to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about what year you are in the program, what your interests are, maybe why you chose Michigan, and then we're gonna open up so that you can ask questions to either us or them. So, Srimati, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah. So hi, I'm Srimati. I am in the second year of the Complet program. So I'm kind of finishing up my coursework and, kind of working out what what I want to work with in the future. I broadly work in Afro-Asian Solidarities, the form of the magazine, South Asian literature, and my languages are around Hindi, Urdu, and Bengali right now, but we have some wonderful support, and I hope to pick up a few more languages. Um, a few things about Complet in specific and Michigan in general that's useful to know before you come. And um, it's interesting and important because it's one of the things that made me choose Michigan. Is that it has some wonderful infrastructure in the sense that we have some of the best libraries and that sort of stuff. And we also have support. It's not only that we have the thing, we also have like people, and then Julie is always there to kind of guide us and be like, oh, talk to that person, and you need this help, you'll get it. So that's one of the things that is very, very useful. So you would want to look at, the resources in the library and that sort of thing. The other thing that's very, very critical to this particular course, I feel Complete in Michigan is its interdisciplinarity that I quite enjoy most of the time. And it kind of opens you up to different methods, different areas. Like you said, we have faculty from all different areas and different national literatures and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, the interdisciplinarity is really helpful. We also can, like, because there is that specific emphasis on translation and that sort of work in the department, and there is a lot of expertise on it. If that is your interest, that is another, I mean, this is a terrific place to be for that. Um, yeah, I feel like it's a plus, so do apply. And yeah, we look forward to seeing some of you, I suppose. Caroline, do you?
Thank you, Srimati. I really appreciate your emphasis on the many resources on campus. I also think one of the great resources in comparative literature is, a sense of community among both within comparative literature and across humanities departments. I think you'll find that a lot of students collaborate with each other on interdisciplinary workshops, on events, special events. So there's an opportunity to interact with other students in a very collaborative, positive, not competitive way. This is not a university where students compete against each other. It's where they work with each other. And we try to model that as faculty as well.
And
Is
hello.
Caroline too?
Yes. Hi everybody. I'm Caroline. I'm in the third year of the program, which means that I'm really finishing up coursework. I will be done after the end of next semester. It means I'm teaching a course that I designed fully for the first time, which was something that was really exciting to me about coming to Michigan, and Complit specifically. And I'm preparing for my preliminary exam, which will happen this year, which means I have sort of assembled the first version of my committee that may fluctuate. I might add people or lose people as the years go by, as I figure out what I need for writing my dissertation. But I've gotten my little team together, and I'm reading and learning sort of everything that would be embarrassing for me to not know if I'm going to write a dissertation about what I'm going to write a dissertation about, which is the literary history of physics in the 20th century in English, French, and German, because I used to sort of study physics and then said, I would rather be a comparatist, and here we are. With regard to reasons that I chose Michigan, really, I chose Michigan at my admitted students visit. So sort of biggest piece of advice that I have for all of you is once you have a better idea of where you're applying, and especially once you know where you've been admitted, really do everything in your power to go to the places where you might go. I frankly thought that I was doing my due diligence to show up here. I had all but committed elsewhere, but the visit was really compelling to me. I loved meeting the people, as Yopi said, in the community, both faculty members and other graduate students. And I felt like this was going to be a very successful place for me to come and study and learn personally, in addition to all the stuff you can read on the website about the various wonderful resources. In addition to the people, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but in addition to the research that I do, teaching is very important to me, and it's something that I love learning how to do better, and something that is also very functional to learn how to do well if you are planning to enter the academic job market or any type of academic job market. Being experienced in that is what you will be doing as a young person in those areas. So the ability to not have to teach in the first year, but to get to pick it up in the later years and try out different classes, design your own syllabi, be the primary leader in a group of students rather than just a TA who's sort of sitting and listening and grading. All of those things were very exciting. Plus the ability to like maybe teach in other departments is a thing that I don't know that much about because I'm not sort of there yet in my career. But the ability to sort of go teach a language class is also very practical, and good for what Yopi has mentioned as the interdisciplinarity and the collaboration that is available with other departments, which it certainly is. Complit is my home base, but I'm perpetually sort of stealing eggs from other people's baskets.
Or maybe laying eggs in other people's baskets.
That too, that's to come.
I think that the emphasis on the teaching experience is really important. We really value undergraduate teaching. We in comparative literature, we try to create courses that really reach out to a wide range of students, not just in the humanities. And we provide a lot of support for students as they're getting their pedagogical training, both in teaching a writing course in the English department in year 2, and then giving them an opportunity to teach a course of their own design in year 3. We have a graduate student teaching mentor. We have our director of undergraduate studies provides mentoring and orientation support for developing syllabi. So we really think of ourselves not only as a scholarly and intellectual community, but also as a teaching community. And I think that our students in Complit have really valued the sense of independence in developing a topic that they would teach to undergraduates in a writing course. And so I think that it's a really important part of our mission as a PhD program to teach pedagogy. It's one of the professional skills that will take you into the world, regardless of whether you end in the classroom or not. Is there anything else that you two would like to say, or Julie, should we go ahead and open it up to questions?
I think so. So you're welcome to either raise your hand, come up and talk, or if you'd prefer to put it in the chat, we can do it that way. So we are open to your questions.
And while we're waiting, I just wanted to mention that Srimati is one of our graduate student representatives this year. And so our grad students serve as we have 2 students serving as representatives as our department meetings. So very much, contributing to debates and discussions we're having in the department. One of the current discussions we're having is whether to expand the name of the undergraduate major from comparative literature to comparative literature, arts and media, and to kind of reach out to a broader group of students. And Caroline is involved in organizing our annual graduate student conference that happens in the spring every year. And so both of Srimati and Caroline have been really active in our community. Thank you for making time to talk with us today. And I hope you can stay around for questions to answer them.
Yeah.
From your
Carolyn is
yes.
Carolyn is also a DEI ally this year, so is working on that committee to work on diversity, equity, and inclusion in the department and what that means. So,
If I can, I just wanted to offer an advice that
yeah,
I don't know who was the person sitting when I took this info session, but that was really helpful. Is when I was like, okay, but how do you differentiate between what to write in the personal statement and the statement of purpose? I feel like one of the things I was told is that, in the personal statement you write about what is the personal trajectory that brought you to the intellectual trajectory that you described in the statement of purpose. And I feel like thinking through that was also very helpful in crafting my statement of purpose. And yeah, that's something that
Thank you for sharing
I
that.
would
I think
highly recommend.
like what has been your personal path, right, to
this intellectual interest. Yes, so that was how I did it, and well, it worked because clearly. So
we have some sample paths to the PhD on our website from students in recent years describing how they decided to apply and go into a PhD program. Looks like we have a question from Aliona.
yes, we've got a couple of questions. The first question was about the ratio of international students to domestic students. I don't have that exact statistic. I'm looking it up right now. But I would say we have a pretty good mix in the department. Yopi, do you want to take Aliona's question while I look that up?
Yeah, Julie will look up the ratio. It's not 50-50, but we have a good solid presence of international students. Aliona, your question.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, first of all, for this presentation. It was very informative and helpful, but I still have some questions. So, my first question would be, I know that you look at the application holistically, but for example, my bachelor's degree is in foreign regional studies, and my master's that I'm getting right now is in foreign literature. So what would you say? Is it okay, or should I somehow? So what would
Well,
be your advice, your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I think that's not an unusual path to find your way into comparative literature through international or foreign studies, right? And second, I think in your personal statement, you can explain how you became more and more oriented towards literature, from your undergraduate work into your master's degree work. So I think that's a really good example of how the personal statement can help you explain why you started out in one field and then grew towards comparative literature. There are very few students who have an opportunity to do comparative literature at the undergraduate level. And I mean, a lot of incoming freshmen don't even know what COMPLET is. And sometimes they don't find out until their third or fourth year. So we don't necessarily expect you to have training in comparative literature as an undergrad. We have students come from a wide range of undergraduate majors. So what the situation you're describing is not at all unusual to us. It's not, and it would not be an impediment to consideration.
Thank you so much. It's very inspiring to hear that. And one more question would be about the writing sample, because during my bachelor's degree, I did write a comparative paper about Bunin and Salinger, but my writing sample that I'm working on right now is about Borges, and you would not be able to consider it too comparative. So what do you think? Should I change it? Should I?
It's okay. Your critical essay does not necessarily have to be comparative. We want to see how you think critically. And if I would share your more recent work on Borges, because that's what you're doing now. It's your most recent thinking and what you've learned, since your undergraduate years. And, you're creating a literary context for thinking about the work of Borges that may raise in, theoretical questions. That's very much within the domain of comparative literature. So I wouldn't worry about that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for your answers. That's it. For now, that's it for sure. Thank you.
And it does look like we're currently at 60% domestic students and 40% international. So that does fluctuate from year to year, but that's the current statistic. Yeah. Yopi, next question for you. Is this person has an undergraduate and postgraduate studies in English literature. The research focuses primarily on English translations, although she does have proficiency in 2 other languages. How flexible are the language requirements in this case, given that the study area is centered on English translation?
So this is a question from Debalina, is that right?
Yes.
So, if you have 2 languages at, proficiency in 2 languages, and you've done some study in those languages, but you're interested in sort of English translations from those languages, that is like a prime example of comparative work, right? Because you're thinking about how a particular language or literature has been translated, its afterlife, its circulation in English. So I think that a research that thinks critically about the circulation of English translations from other languages, especially where you have familiarity with those languages, is it's also inherently comparative. So I work a lot on classical translations of ancient Greek and Latin texts into English, and I have training in those languages, but my research is on what's published in English. So there are many ways to think about comparative work. I think that if you're interested in English translations, tell us about your critical frame. Like what kinds of questions do you ask, and why particular languages or authors or literary traditions are of interest to you. So even though your study may be focused on English translations, that doesn't make it a non-comparative project. I see there's a second question here.
Yes, I can take that one if you'd like. So the second question is regarding recommendation letters and how flexible we are on the timeline and the deadline for recommenders. So we can be a tiny bit flexible, but we're talking about maybe 1 or 2 days, not 1 or 2 weeks. The review process starts fairly quickly after the deadline to make sure that I can make sure that before faculty are off at the end of the fall term, that they have access to materials before they leave for break. So we do move pretty quickly after that deadline to get things out. That doesn't mean if a recommender has a problem and they really can't get it in, they can still submit it late. The risk with submitting late is that faculty reviewers may or may not see that letter depending on when they access the materials. Do you have anything else to add in there, Yopi?
I think that's right. Yeah.
I think Amy has a question.
Hi, Amy.
Hello, hope everyone can hear me. Hi, I'm Amy. Thank you again for the presentation. It was really helpful. And my question is more about, it's kind of a general question about how classes are. I was really inspired by the faculty that I noticed on the website and the really diverse research interests that people at the program or at the department have. But I guess my question was first, I guess how flexible are the classes? What I'm asking is in how much are students able to bring to a class? I feel like it's kind of a weird question because I've done grad school. I'm doing my master's at Binghamton right now. So I kind of get the gist of how to give in your application, but something I'm really, I guess, thinking about as I'm starting to choose what programs I want to apply to and programs I don't want to apply to is, how much students can contribute to a class. I find that the classes I enjoy the most, the classes I learn the most, are where, students can kind of bring in their own diverse interests and, contribute to a class, offer up readings, offer up their experiences from their different research interests and their different backgrounds. And so it's not like, obviously, I know every class is going to, have discussion sections. Every class is going to discuss text, but I guess I wanted to ask kind of in general, as a department, what is the attitude towards, students contributing to their classes, and what is the attitude towards, or I guess, how do professors in general view collaborating with students or shaping their syllabi around students' interests? Because like I said, the classes I find that I'm the most engaged in, that I am most interested in, are where, my peers can have a voice, if that makes sense, in their classes and can contribute, alongside their professors and kind of learn in a collaborative environment. So I'd appreciate, getting a little more insight on kind of what the philosophy is around classes and that kind of stuff. Thank you.
So the usual format for graduate courses is seminars, right? And seminars are limited to 12 to 15. Very rarely, if it's a 500 or 600 introductory seminar, it will be, a course limited to 18. But the emphasis is very much on graduate courses being small, that they depend very much on students' participation, contribution to discussion, and also oral presentations based on research or readings they're doing in the class. Usually the final paper that's written in a graduate seminar will be, on a topic initiated by the students that makes sense within the context of the seminar, right? So I think you already see that, graduate education is much more student driven than an undergraduate course on a topic where the faculty member makes up the syllabus and tells you exactly what to read. I know that when I teach courses on critical translation studies, I try to figure out what students are bringing to the class in terms of languages, interests, skills. And then I always create time later in the semester for students to present on topics or even to choose some shared readings that we'll do together. So I think of my graduate seminars as quite collaborative and that they emerge from the students. Other faculty may be a little bit more topic driven, like they're really interested in working out a particular theoretical problem, and they may assign, specific readings, but then they want the students to kind of engage and argue back and contribute their own thoughts about that problem, right? So I think generally you will find that graduate seminars are not lecture oriented, and the syllabus is geared towards introducing students to a field to which they can bring their own particular areas of expertise, especially in comparative literature, because people are working in so many different areas. It's a little bit generational too. There's some faculty who still feel like they have to, present a field and make you sort of aware that exists with certain parameters, or faculty who will teach a particular topic. But I do encourage our comp lit students, when they're in a class like that, to understand that what that faculty member is doing is modeling a certain approach that you can learn from and figure out how that might integrate into your materials and your interests. So sometimes those courses can be the most valuable because you've been introduced to an approach that you otherwise might not have learned about. I hope that answers some of your questions. I do think that, generally graduate students are learning to be more and more independent as scholars. And as you go through the different milestones, you will see that, our prelim exam is not a preset list. We have the students generate the list in consultation with faculty. And we ask students to define their own candidacy project, and we ask them to come up with, the rationale for their prospectus. So it's very increasingly more and more independent, depending, on what you bring to the table. And that's what you're being evaluated on. What is your goal? What do you define as your field? How can we help you develop that?
If I may add to this, I feel like faculty is very open to actually tampering with the syllabus as per, like, at the end of the first class, I feel like everybody knows that there's, okay, these are the students and these are the interests, and then I have had, for every class that I've sat in, the syllabus has changed kind of spontaneously with what the student requires. And also there are like levels of course, like Yupi said, there are the 500s and the early 600 courses, which are much more like survey courses in which you're supposed to kind of be introduced to a whole field, and that's like a field vision of it. So you're kind of doing a field survey. And then there are the 780-ish kind of courses, which are much more driven by specifics. So like if you take kind of a mix of both, I feel like, and that is not to say that the early 600s are not open to suggestions. And of course, there's always that element of presentation in which you do your own stuff and you kind of engage with what's going on in class with the material that you're studying. So yeah, I feel like it's very responsive. As a culture, we're extremely responsive. And we're also kind of responsive to one another, in the sense that students sitting in the classroom will often be like, I mean, I have had this one particular class I remember where we were doing South Asia and South Korea, and almost like half an hour in that class, there was another student and we were like, oh, you do know what this happened to us also, sort of thing. So yeah, it's a rather collaborative environment that way.
I mean, it's interesting, Amy, that you are very ready to engage in that way with your classes. There's some students who come into graduate school expecting it to be more like undergraduate, like lectures, and not. It takes a while to realize, oh, in a graduate seminar, you're expected to contribute, you're expected to interact, and so the learning curve there can be a little bit more challenging, right? It takes a little while to say, oh, something different is expected from me in the graduate school setting than in an undergraduate course.
And I suppose I would add, I've taken one course here that was fully sort of designed by the students, in the sense that sort of everybody had a day and they said on that day, here's the piece of theory we're going to read, and here's this thing that goes with it that we're going to read that might be another piece of theory or might be a piece of literature or whatnot. So that does exist, but it is rarer compared to something with a structured syllabus that is less informed by things that the students sort of bring in or try to add to the syllabus. On the other hand, where you do have a great deal of freedom often is in the paper that you write at the end. So you might be reading things that are not from your time period or not from the nations that you're or you know, groups, languages that you're interested in. But then you might get to the end and the professor says, okay, this has been a class about time in the German imagination. Write me a paper that has literally anything to do with time. You might have a bunch of space to use the course kind of as tangentially as you need to do something that is productive for you. And in my experience, professors have been very sort of flexible also with shifting what an assignment even is based on what it is productive for me to be working on, for me to be spending my time doing. If a conference is coming up and I need to work on a conference paper, not a research paper, they're often very supportive of that. If they want me to do a translation, but I want to do a back translation, that has been very possible historically. So that's where I think my contributions come in terms of literally bringing my texts in rather than editing the syllabus so much.
Super helpful, Caroline. Thank you. I see there's a question about writing samples. If an article has already been published with you as the second author, can that be submitted as a writing sample? I think I would lean towards writing something where you are the single author. If you really feel like you were centrally involved in an article that was published, you would probably need to, that you would like to present as your own work. You would need to explain exactly what you contributed to that article. And perhaps the first author would need to, explain that as well. But I would say that if you have other options to present something that you've written, even if it's not published, we're not looking for a published article necessarily, but we'd like to see something that you have written in your own voice. So I would prefer where you would be the single author rather than, even if it's a second author on a published piece, I'd rather see something, an essay that's still in progress or that's not published, with you as the single author. So I wouldn't rule it out altogether, but you would have to really go a good way towards explaining why you collaborated on this article and what your role was in contributing to it. Another question about how long the writing sample and statement length should be. So the statement length, we're thinking not more than 2 pages for each of, single spaced at best, or, sometimes statements, if it's a double spaced statement, it can go into 3 pages sometimes, but we don't expect the statement to be too long. The writing sample, there is nominally speaking, a limit. Is that right, Julie?
Yes, but we're not going to count exactly. So if it's 1 or 2 pages different, that's fine. We just really ask that you don't send us huge files because it becomes a huge burden for the faculty. So
yeah. So not your entire master's thesis, but an excerpt.
Yeah.
Right. A couple questions from Anna Phillips. Should the critical essay in English necessarily be a literary analysis? Could it be on a different humanities topic? Absolutely. We think about comparative literature as being a mode of reading, and not only what you read, but how you read. So if there's a topic in humanities or cultural studies or digital studies, or, in visual culture that you want to write about, from a kind of critical, complet perspective, that would be fine. And the foreign language essay does not necessarily need to be a critical essay in the humanities. For the second essay, we're looking at, your language proficiency. So, Julie, do you want to add to that?
Nope. Just wanted to find out if there are any other questions before we wrap up. Okay. Thank you for all coming. We appreciate it. And this last slide is oops, sorry. Do we have another? Go ahead, Micah.
Sorry, thanks. I wanted to follow up on the page length question. Um, I'm specifically a little concerned because my undergraduate program tended to write very short papers. So I have a number of papers that are short that I'm proud of, but I don't think I have anything up to 15 pages. So would you recommend kind of beefing up one of my shorter papers or perhaps submitting multiple?
I think it would be okay to combine two shorter papers into, I mean, to say I don't have something that's 15 pages, but I do have two 8-page essays, so I'm going to give you these two. That would be fine.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you for your attention, and thanks to Caroline and Srimati for participating. Thank you to Julie for setting this all up and coordinating. Julie, you are fantastic. You are keep it all together, and we look forward to learning more about you as you decide to apply to the Department of Comparative Literature in
All right,
University.
Opie, another one came in.
Oh.
Can you speak to how students engaged with foreign languages during the program? Are there language course requirements? And if not, how else are languages included?
So we offer, so students who, because we have a language requirement of two languages at advanced proficiency by the time that you achieve candidacy, a good number of our students take graduate seminars in departments, that offer those languages. So that's one of the ways you can demonstrate advanced proficiency is by taking one of those advanced level seminars in German or Slavic. So we do have very particular course requirements. Other ways to meet those requirements is to do intensive language instruction at the advanced level, either in summer study abroad, towards which we can provide some support, or in some of our own intensive language courses offered at the University of Michigan. U of M offers a very wide range of languages, including less commonly taught languages. So you'll find that the resources for learning languages and improving your languages at Michigan are very, very strong. So the International Institute also provides funding sometimes, and the Rackham Graduate School for pursuing intensive language study. So, those are all the different ways in which language proficiency is very much part of your graduate program.
And then there are opportunities too to engage with language outside of the classroom. Some of the departments have reading groups that focus on certain languages. We have a language resource center here that focuses partially on translation. And one of my favorite events that they do on campus is called the Translate-a-thon. And they just get everybody together from all over campus, and they work for nonprofits that need help transferring or translating information. And it's this group kind of collaborative thing. And they have opportunities throughout the year to engage as conversation partners with folks or to help translate documents that need to be translated. So there are definitely opportunities to engage outside of your coursework as well.
Yes. And of course, students, go ahead.
I was just going to specify, because you asked specifically, are there language course requirements? The answer to that is technically no. If you show up with advanced proficiency in two languages, you don't have to sign up for French 101 in order to meet a language study requirement. You have to achieve and demonstrate advanced proficiency in some manner by taking courses where you learn grammar at that level intensively, or by performing your proficiency in a higher level graduate class.
Thank you, Carolyn. So I wanted to let everyone know too, my email address, the Complet Student Services, is up on the screen. If you have questions that you didn't answer today, if you think of something later on, anything as you're walking through this entire application admissions process, feel free to reach out to us. If I can't answer the question, I will find the person that can. consult with Yopi as the director of graduate studies very frequently. We're in constant contact, so we will get your questions answered. This is the best address to do it. I know you may see our personal email addresses floating around in different places, but this is definitely the place to reach out. And it's literally part of my job to help with this and to answer these questions. So don't hesitate to ask.
Thank you for your interest and good luck to all of you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you a lot. Bye bye.